Before any star shone in the sky, before time began to run, and long before the earth existed, there was only eternal silence. There were no planets, galaxies, human beings, or even matter. The universe as we know it had yet to be formed. There was no sound, light, or movement, and yet something, or rather someone, already existed. This presence preceding all things is the starting point of every mystery. But when we discovered that the angels were already praising God before the foundation of the world, a new doubt arises. When were these heavenly beings created? And even more unsettling, who created the one who created them? Before we begin, take a deep breath. What you are about to hear might completely change your view about God, time, and existence itself. If you love deep spiritual topics, mysteries hidden within the scriptures, and questions that few dare to ask, then subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and hit like right now. Because today, we are going to cross the veil of the visible and dive into the eternal. The Bible gives us clues about this mystery in the book of Job, chapter 38, verse 7. It is written, "While the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy." This verse suggests that the angels were present and rejoicing at the moment when the earth was created. But if they were there when everything began, that means they existed before the earth. Yet the Genesis narrative, which meticulously details the creation of the physical world, never mentions the creation of the angels. This opens up a daring question. Were the angels created at a hidden moment, outside of time as we know it? Or did they already exist in a higher reality beyond our dimension? For centuries, theologians and scholars have debated when the angels were created. One school of thought holds that they appeared before the creation of the physical world, when God established the heavens and the spiritual realm. Colossians 1:16 affirms that by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. This includes the angels and all the celestial hierarchy. In other words, before there was form and matter, there was already a spiritual order. Yet the angels are not eternal like God. They have a starting point. They are creatures. They were created to serve and worship the Creator, and they dwell in a realm where time does not flow as ours does, but where there is still a beginning. The idea that God created the angels is accepted by virtually all Christian traditions, but this truth opens up an even deeper question. Who created God? This question challenges the limits of the human mind, which has been shaped to think in terms of beginnings and endings, cause and effect. However, the scriptures reveal something surprising. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting you are God. Psalm 92. This means that God was not created, never had a beginning, and will never have an end. He is self-existent, absolute, eternal. He is the only being that simply is. But how can we accept that something can simply exist without an origin? Perhaps that is proof that to understand the Creator, we need revelation more than reason. It is hard to conceive of something that did not have a beginning. Our minds were molded within time, where everything is born, develops and ends. We are taught to look for causes for every effect. If something exists, we assume someone made it. But with God, that logic falls apart. He is the only being that was not caused, because he is the very cause of all things. He not only created time, he is beyond it. While everything we know depends on a starting point, God exists in an eternity where past, present, and future simply do not apply. This concept is not only difficult, it is impossible to be fully comprehended by the human mind. But if God is eternal and self-existent, why did he decide to create? What would motivate a being who is completely whole and self-sufficient to form creatures like angels, intelligent, powerful beings, yet infinitely inferior to him? Some theologians believe that the creation of angels was an act of love and a manifestation of divine glory. God did not create out of necessity, but out of desire. A desire to express his essence, to reveal his power, his justice, and his beauty to beings who could behold and worship him. In this sense, the angels are not merely servants, they are eternal witnesses to God's majesty. They exist to praise him, to obey his commands, and to participate in the divine order of the spiritual world. The existence of angels, however, also leads us to another dilemma. If God created these beings with free will, why allow some to rebel? The Bible tells us about the fall of Lucifer and the rebellion of angels who chose to oppose the Creator. If God knew this would happen, why did he not prevent it? The answer, once again, lies in freedom. True love requires choice. God could have created celestial machines programmed to obey, but he preferred to create beings with the capacity to decide. And some, unfortunately, chose darkness. This shows that even the highest angels, as exalted as they are limited creatures, subject to testing, to error, and to the consequences of their choices. And yet, despite the rebellion of some, the majority of angels remain faithful to their original purpose. The Bible speaks of multitudes of angels surrounding God's throne, proclaiming day and night, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." These glorious beings were created to serve in different functions: messengers, warriors, protectors, intercessors. There are angelic hierarchies, such as archangels, cherubim, and seraphim, each with specific roles in the divine plan. They not only observe humanity, they interact with it. The history of salvation is full of angelic appearances, and even today, many believe that they continue to act silently, protecting, guiding, and carrying out God's will on earth. Throughout the Bible, angels appear as messengers at crucial moments in human history. It was an angel who announced Jesus' birth to Mary. Another appeared to Joseph in dreams. Angels guided the people of Israel, protected prophets, and even opened prison doors. But as impressive as these manifestations are, they represent only a small fraction of what angels truly are and do. Much of what they carry out happens in the unseen, in the spiritual realm. They battle against evil forces, protect the chosen, and fulfill God's will with absolute precision. They are servants of the Most High, yet at the same time spectators of the redemptive plan, something they observe with reverence and admiration. However, it is important to understand that angels, despite their glory, should not be worshipped. In Revelation 22, the Apostle John falls at the feet of an angel and is immediately rebuked. "Do not do that. I am your fellow servant. Worship God." This passage is clear. Angels are servants, not deities. They are not eternal in the same sense that God is. They were created, have a beginning, and their power comes directly from the Creator. Every time a creature tries to take the place of the Creator, it falls. And that is exactly what happened with Lucifer. He did not merely want to reflect God's glory, he wanted to receive it. He desired to ascend above the throne of the Most High, and he was cast out like a flash of lightning. Lucifer's rebellion not only shook the heavens, but also revealed the tension between freedom and submission. Lucifer was an anointed cherub, described as perfect in beauty, full of wisdom and adorned with precious stones. But his heart filled with pride. He wanted to be like the Most High. This insurrection caused a spiritual rupture, and many angels followed him, becoming what we now call demons. They were expelled from God's presence, but they remain active, deceiving, accusing, and destroying. The existence of these fallen beings is proof that even in the spiritual world there is conflict. It shows that free will is a powerful gift, capable of leading to eternal glory or ruin. Yet even in the face of some falling, God's plan was never thwarted. The faithful angels remained by the Creator's side, executing His will in every dimension. They fight against the forces of darkness, announce promises, and protect those who fear the Lord. They do not know everything, but they watch carefully every step of humanity. 1 Peter tells us that even the angels long to look into these things, referring to the plan of salvation. This reveals something profound. Angels not only serve, but also learn from the history of humanity. They see grace, forgiveness, and God's love being manifested. And that fascinates them, for even though they are celestial, they have never experienced what we call redemption. As we reflect on the creation of angels, we realize that the spiritual universe is much more structured and organized than we imagine. It is not a matter of random beings floating in the skies, but of an army with defined hierarchies and functions. The Bible mentions thrones, dominions, principalities, and powers, terms that reveal a chain of command in the celestial realm. The seraphim, for example, are described in Isaiah as beings who cover their faces before God's glory, continuously proclaiming, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." Cherubim appear guarding the way to the tree of life after the man's expulsion from Eden. These distinctions point to a careful and intentional creation, reflecting the order and holiness of the Creator. But if angels were created by God, how can we understand the existence of a Creator who was never created? This question, asked for centuries by philosophers and theologians, always leads to the same point. God is eternal. There was never a moment when He began to exist. He is the beginning of all things, yet He Himself had no beginning. This idea is reinforced in Revelation 1:8, where the Lord declares, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, says the Lord, who is, who was, and who is to come." God is the very author of time, and He is above it. Eternity is not just endless time, but an existence outside of time. For God, yesterday, today, and tomorrow coexist fully and absolutely. The reason we have difficulty accepting a being without origin is that everything we know has a cause. Our logic is based on beginnings, processes, and ends, but God is not bound by this logic. He is not a part of the universe. He is the creator of the universe. He is the starting point of all realities, visible and invisible. If something existed before Him, that something would be the true God. But there is nothing. He is unique. He is absolute. He is the I am, as He declared to Moses on Mount Horeb. "Not I was, nor I will be, but I am," an affirmation of constant, infinite, and self-sufficient existence. This is the God who created the angels, and this is the God who sustains everything, including you. When we recognize God's eternity and His absolute sovereignty, we begin to better understand the role of angels and our own place in creation. Angels, no matter how powerful and glorious they are still servants. They are creatures created to worship, obey, and act according to the Creator's will. They do not possess the divine essence. They are not omnipresent, omniscient, or omnipotent. Only God possesses these attributes. And that is why all worship should be directed exclusively to Him. The angels point us to God, never to themselves. They exist so that the glory of the Most High may be known and recognized in all dimensions. And just like the angels, we too were created to glorify the One who is eternal, invisible, unchanging, and infinitely holy. Even among the angels, there are levels of revelation. Some dwell closer to the throne, like the seraphim who worship Him ceaselessly. Others are sent to earth with specific missions, such as Gabriel. the messenger who announced Jesus' birth. There is also Michael, the warrior archangel mentioned in Daniel and Revelation, leading battles against evil. Each has a defined function within God's eternal plan, and despite their glory, none of them know all the Creator's designs. They execute orders, but do not control times or judgments. They are ministers of the Most High, but they do not share His divine nature. They know that there is only one who is eternal, and before Him even the angels bow in reverence. In studying the origin of angels, we are inevitably led to the center of it all, the existence of God. And the more we look to Him, the more we realize that we are not facing an ordinary being, but a supreme reality, infinitely beyond our comprehension. God not only created the heavens and the angels, He sustains all things with His word. Hebrews 1:3 states that He upholds all things by the word of His power. This includes both the spiritual and the material world. Nothing exists on its own. Nothing stands without His permission. Not even the angels, however resplendent they may be, have life in themselves. Everything depends on Him. Everything returns to Him. Therefore, the question, who created God, finds no answer within the limits of human logic. It is like trying to put the ocean inside a cup. God was not created. He simply is. He exists by Himself from before time, space, matter, or consciousness. All creation, including angels, men, and worlds, derives from His sovereign will. Attempting to explain God according to the rules of creation is a common error. It is like trying to understand an author by looking only at the characters. God is not a part of the book. He is the one who wrote the story. He is above the plot, beyond the pages. He is the Alpha and the Omega. And no matter how much the mind may not comprehend, the spirit can discern. Understanding that God is eternal and that angels are created, we begin to see the great difference between the Creator and the creatures. This distinction is fundamental to avoid doctrinal and spiritual errors. Many, throughout history, became so enchanted with the angels that they began to venerate them, falling into idolatry. Others went even further. They tried to invoke angels, control their actions, or seek protection from them apart from God's will. But the faithful angels never accepted worship. They always point to the Lord. They do not seek their own glory. They do nothing on their own account. They obey, serve, and bow before the one who never had a beginning and who will never have an end. There is a silent wisdom in the angels who remain before God. They do not question their origin nor demand explanations. They know that the Creator is worthy of absolute trust. They do not need to understand everything to obey. Unlike many men who demand proofs, arguments, and guarantees, the faithful angels bow in reverence before the majesty of the Eternal. They know His glory, feel His power, and live in His presence. For them, God's existence is not a theory, it is pure reality. And perhaps that is the secret. The closer you are to God, the less need there is to understand, and the greater the desire to worship. Yet even among the angels, there was pride. And this shows us something profound. The presence of God does not eliminate the possibility of choice. Lucifer fell not out of ignorance, but out of arrogance. He saw the glory, felt the power, and still desired the throne. His fall was triggered by a heart that could not accept being a creature. He wanted to be like the Creator, and that is exactly the root of every rebellion, whether in heaven or on earth, the refusal to acknowledge that there is only one God. When a created being tries to occupy the place of the Eternal, the result is always destruction. That is what happened with Lucifer. It is the same with man, and it will be so with anyone who challenges the throne of the Most High. The question, who created God, can also hide a subtle trap. It may reveal a desire to reduce the eternal to something comprehensible, to make him small enough to fit into human logic. But God is not an equation to be solved. He is a mystery to be worshipped. His eternity is not a mathematical enigma. It is a spiritual revelation. He does not call us to understand him completely, but to know him by faith. And that faith is not blind. It is based on evidence, experiences, and revelations. The heavens proclaim God's glory, and the angels have been witnesses to that since the beginning. They know everything had a beginning, except the one who created them. And perhaps that is what impresses us the most, knowing that we were created by the same God who formed the angels, the heavens, and all that exists. The one who was never created, who has no origin or end, decided to form us with his own hands. He did not need us, but he wanted us. This not only gives us purpose, but also dignity. We were thought of, desired, and begotten by the eternal. And just like the angels, we have a calling to recognize who the Creator is, to worship him in spirit and in truth, and to never try to occupy the place that belongs only to him. For we were not made for our own glory, but to reflect the glory of him who has existed since before time. In Revelation, we see a powerful scene. Thousands of angels around the throne, prostrated, casting their crowns before God and saying, "Worthy are you, Lord, to receive glory, honor, and power, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created." This declaration reveals an absolute truth. Everything that exists because he willed it. Nothing is the result of chance. Nothing came about accidentally. The angels were not formed out of necessity, but by decision. The entire creation is the result of God's sovereign will. He did not create out of loneliness or need, but for purpose and glory. And that includes us. We were called into existence by the one who has always existed. When we understand that God had no beginning, our relationship with time changes. We begin to perceive that what we call a beginning is, in fact, only the point at which we were inserted into a much larger story. The angels, for example, have been present since the beginning of creation, but they are not eternal in the same way that God is. They have a beginning, but they do not have an expiration date, unless they choose to rebel. But God has neither a starting point nor a finish line. He is the author, and everything else is merely a page. Therefore, it is useless to try to define God by the limits of creation. He is outside of the narrative he wrote, and it is precisely this that makes him worthy of eternal worship. Some may question, if God is eternal, why did he only create the universe at a certain moment? What was he doing before creating all things? But this question stems from human logic, where everything must be within a chronology. God is not within time. The time is within him. For him, there is no before or after. Everything happens before his eyes as a continuous present. And it is in this timeless reality that the angels were created. They did not witness God's creation. They witnessed the creation of the universe. Because the Creator has no origin or prior history, he is the only being whose existence depends on nothing other than himself. And it is this God, eternal, invisible, incomprehensible, who decided to reveal himself, not only to the angels, but to us, human beings. He manifested himself through creation, through the Word, and finally in Christ. The one who never had a beginning entered into history to give us an eternal destiny. This is more than doctrine. It is grace. And the angels, even without experiencing redemption, contemplate this mystery with admiration. The salvation that God offers to man is something that even celestial beings cannot fully understand. They watch, serve, protect, announce. But they know that only the Creator has the power to transform the heart, and it is to this God that they render glory. the same God who calls us today to know him. The creation of the angels was only the beginning of what we now call the spiritual reality. With them, God established an invisible but real order, a universe where battles, worship, and decrees unfold that affect the visible world. Every angel created carries a specific purpose in the eternal plan, and although many of them have never been seen by human eyes, their actions shape histories, protect destinies, and fulfill divine promises. What is invisible to us is extremely active in the celestial realm. The angels know this. They move with awe and reverence before the one who formed them, not from clay, but with glory. That glory which emanates from God himself is not shared with anyone. Isaiah 42:8 declares, "I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory I give to no other." This means that not even the angels, as powerful and pure as they are, can receive praise meant for the Creator. All of creation points to him, but only he is the center. That is why any attempt to worship angels, saints, or any creature is rejected by the Scriptures. The true spiritual servant recognizes his place and does not accept the glory that belongs to God. The faithful angels live to reflect that light, never to compete with it. They exist so that all eyes may turn to the eternal. And when we ask ourselves, who created God, we realize that this question is not only philosophical, it is spiritual. It reveals man's quest for an origin, an explanation, a structure that makes sense within his limitations. But God is beyond logic. He is the foundation of everything that makes sense. Questioning God's origin is like trying to measure eternity with a plastic ruler. The human mind was simply not designed to comprehend something that did not have a beginning. But the Spirit created by God, recognizes the voice of its creator. Even without understanding everything, it bows in worship, because faith sees what the eyes cannot see and accepts what reason cannot grasp. That is why at the end of every search, every question, every doubt, only one certainty remains. God is. He always was and always will be. There is no moment when he does not exist, nor a space where he is not. He is the beginning of all things, yet he himself has no beginning. This truth sustains the existence of angels, the universe, and humanity itself. Everything that was created depends on him to continue existing, and yet this exalted God chose to reveal himself to us. He calls us, invites us, reaches out to us. And that changes everything, because the one who was never created chose to love those who were. The God who created the angels is not limited to the spiritual world. He also created the physical world. He formed the heavens, the earth, the oceans, the animals, and finally, man. But unlike the angels, human beings were created in the image and likeness of God. This does not mean that we are gods, but that we carry within us a divine mark, the ability to reflect the character of the Creator, and this includes freedom, consciousness, love, and responsibility. The same God who was never originated decided to create beings capable of relating to him in a unique way. The angels serve him, but the children know him, and that is an immeasurable privilege. Throughout history, many have tried to deny the existence of God simply because they could not comprehend him. Others have attempted to reduce him to formulas, systems, or philosophies. But the true God does not fit into theories. He cannot be completely controlled, explained, or limited by human words. He reveals himself to those who seek him with humility, and this revelation transforms. It is not merely knowledge, it is an encounter. The eternal Creator bends down to speak with his creatures. He makes himself heard in the silence, felt in the pain, and revealed powerfully to those who worship him in spirit and in truth. And before him, all creation, angels and men, prostrates. The question that has brought us here, who created the angels and who created the Creator, no longer needs a logical answer, because it has led us to the center of spiritual truth. God is eternal. He is the origin without origin, the existence without a beginning, the absolute being who created time, space, and all that exists. He created the angels as glorious servants. He created man as an adopted child. And he continues to call each one of us back to our original purpose, to know, love, and glorify the God who was never created, a God who does not need to be explained, but rather worshipped. And now that you have come this far, I ask you, what will you do with this revelation? Will you ignore it? Or will you allow it to transform your life? The Creator of angels, the eternal who always was, continues waiting for you. He is not distant. He is calling, not to fill you with answers, but to give you peace, faith, purpose, and salvation. Because the God who created everything, including the heavenly hosts, also created you, and He loves you with an eternal love. Quote of the day: the greatest wisdom is not to understand everything about God, but to recognize Him as the only one worthy of all glory. If this message touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, hit like, and tell us in the comments which city you are watching from. See you in the next video.